Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Hello, this week I'm talking to Rachel Pendered, founder and CEO of Media Zoo, a media and PR consultancy with offices in London, Glasgow, Zurich, the Middle East and New York. Rachel founded Media Zoo in 2003 following a very successful career as a TV producer for the BBC. By her very own admittance, Media Zoo was born less out of Rachel's desire to be an entrepreneur and more from a perspective of wanting to form a producers collective. But it was from these very humble beginnings that Media Zoo became the sizable operation it is today. I really love this conversation with Rachel because, as you'll hear yourselves, she is really incredibly passionate about so many things, whether it's her personal and professional purpose, the masculine and feminine approaches to business, honing one's entrepreneurial skills, the role of an entrepreneur in society, and the changing landscape of PR and communications. You'll also hear all about the Zooinversity, yes, you heard that right, which has been formed to encourage and nurture young talent. This is a really wide and varied conversation, so I really do hope you enjoy this episode. Hi Rachel, welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on a guest. I'm really interested to have our conversation today about the communications, PR world, your own personal journey as well. So I suppose we should start a little bit. You founded or co-founded Media Zoo in 2003. Before that, you had a successful career as a TV producer. What brought you into the world of co-founding your own business? Were you always destined to start your own business, Rachel?
Well, I can't entirely answer whether it was my destiny or not, but I can tell you the story of how it happened. So I was working at the BBC. I ran a small investigations team in the consumer department, and we were making long form programs, typically on things like serious fraud or where the consumers had been really let down by the companies that were supposed to serve them. We featured people like the Craftsman family who had sold extended warranties that they didn't then offer, and they had put their business, which was called Tempo, into administration. Shows like Britain's Biggest Car Fraud, where vehicles were being stolen in Japan, ringed in the free trade era in Sharjah and sold as if they were second-hand vehicles and not stolen vehicles. Wow. On the market in the UK. So those are the kind of things that I did, and I went undercover and I had great fun. I worked with Donald McIntyre and I had the most amazing TV career and experience, and I got to see things, interview the Yakuza, all sorts of things. It was wonderful. But what I didn't enjoy about the job, and they say, don't they, that people who end up starting their own companies are typically unemployable. And
it's a fair comment, isn't it, that we all agree on once we've run our own business.
Yes, it's so true. And what I really struggled with was the red tape, the expenses, being told what to do. And there were sort of real low moments in my career. So I got, for example, this interviewee who was going to be at this hotel in the Middle East, and it was this very specific hotel, and I remember going into the production office and saying, I've got this incredible undercover whistleblower and I need to stay in this hotel, and it was £10 more than the rate that you were allowed. You know what I mean? And it was like, and they were like, no, you can't stay there. And I'm like, no, I've got a tiny window, I need to stay in that hotel, and things like that. And I just really struggled. There was another time I wanted a film in the corridor and at the BBC, and they were like, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, it's the BBC. Why can't we film it? Like, oh, health and safety.
This is a filming studio. This is what we do.
Yeah. And I was like, I know. Anyway, so I really struggled with behaving myself, and I really struggled with red tape and a big corporation. Anyway,
yeah.
But I didn't want to start my own business at all. And what I really wanted, I thought it would be a very lonely road, profoundly lonely. And I wasn't really up for that. So what I wanted to do was start what was, in my head, a producers collective. And so the idea was there would be 100 people, 100 shares, or up to 100 people. We would all have one share in the business, and we would charge our freelance rate, but we would also have an opportunity to effectively have like a production fee that we would share at the end of the year. And we would always recommend the same sound man, script man, or person, script human, DOP. And it would mean that you kind of got to work with your gang and make the best kind of programs. Anyway.
So that's where the name Media Zoo came from.
All the animals in the zoo.
I get it now.
Yes, all the animals in the zoo. So, all these different talented people, graphic designers, soundies, etc., etc. Anyway, no one got it. No one liked it. No one wanted to join.
It's very ideological and it sounds great, but it just...
No one, except my co-founder, Mark Killick, who is a creative director of BBC One. And he said to me, he'd left and he was working at Hill and Knowlton as their media counsel. And he said to me, look, I'm doing whatever days for Hill and Knowlton, but I can give you 2 days a month. And so it was just me and him. Okay. So I was full-time and he did 2 days a month. And that was the beginning of Media Zoo. It was just me with a phone. And the genesis of the company was we started off making TV shows for Channel 4 and 5. We did shows for Donal. Because he had left the BBC and gone to Channel 5. So we did undercover shows. We did a really cool series with Rankin called Hot Shots, which was him turning celebrities into their nemesis, effectively. And it was broadcast on Channel 4, but it was also kind of front page of the Sun and the Mirror. Yeah. And it was people like Ronan Keating dressed as a woman. It was really great fun, actually, that show to work on. So that was kind of how it started, but it was tiny little company.
But it was still very much in the TV world at that point.
Pure television, yes.
Wow. And if you roll forward, just to give our listeners a bit of context to where Media Zoo is today, what space it operates in, how large is the company now?
Yeah, so we have, our main campus is here in Chelsea Harbour, where we have 4 buildings, we have 2 television studios, we have 18 edit suites, we have sound booths, not that I'm in one today, and we have a campus set up here, and we have embedded teams here as well. So this is our headquarters, and I'll go into those in a minute. We have offices in Scotland, we have offices in Zurich, we have just started Media Zoo Middle East, so we've just got the first kind of office in Abu Dhabi, and we have a very small presence in the US, tiny, so not really properly there yet. And we have 3 main divisions, so we have our PR and comms team, we have our film and content unit, and we have our digital learning team and designers. And then I guess, obviously, we also have in-house animation, graphics, all of that. But we also have what we call Zoo Plus. And Zoo Plus is basically an outsourcing service. So someone might give us their entire digital learning team. They might give us their whole press office, and we will run that on a 3-year contract. Sometimes those people will be here, and sometimes they will be in the companies that we work with. And we have them in most of the major banks and management consultants and consultancy firms in the UK. One of those teams doing one of the 3 things that we do, or sometimes 2 or 3 of the things.
Wow.
We also have the Zooinversity, which is quite exciting. So it's a new thing, the Zoonies, and that's based in Glasgow, so our Scottish office. And what we're doing is we take brilliant, bright young people, and we teach them the digital skills they need for us. So we've just started with the first digital course, but we are then going to roll that out into many, many other skills, from behavioural science to PR to basic filmmaking, animation, graphics, all sorts. But yeah, we've just started the first kind of intake, so the Zoonies are amazing.
The Zoonies, I like
Yes.
that. Are they a bit like the Goonies, that
Well,
old film?
Well, I don't know whether I want them to be like that or not, but they are certainly bright and brilliant.
Zoonies.
Yes.
Brilliant. And that really is that grow your own philosophy then, isn't it? That's coming through. I think we'll come back and talk to you about that in a moment, Rachel. But I suppose that is an amazing journey to go in that short 19 years, short 19-year period from startup, very much, starting doing what you were doing in a paid role in a kind of in your own business to where you are today. And so what really turns you on about the business? Is it having all these ideas and enabling the business to grow? Is it still being a creative? What is it now that makes you wake up and come into work and continue to build Media Zoo?
So I think what happens to most people at a certain level is you've made as much money as you need for the rest of your lifetime, and it's not about that anymore. It's about purpose, and it's about doing something every day that matters to you on a personal level. And I think it's really important for me to define what I mean by purpose, which is if, we're headed into really difficult times, that's for sure, cost of living crisis, rising, inflation and interest rates. Sometimes I'm really happy that my purpose is to give people a great place to work and good jobs and keep everything going. That for me has always felt noble. I remember when the first person that worked for me got a mortgage, who came in and said, I'm going to get the mortgage because I've got a job with you. And it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not a big deal when you're a much bigger company, but when you first realize and you sort of connect the dots, and it was because they were amazing, but that means a huge amount to me, providing, meaningful employment to people and helping them, their dreams. And that has always been a big part of, why, because sometimes, it's a 16-hour day of just, there's a leak, someone's suing you, something else has happened. I mean, it's endless, just sort of.
It's not a smooth journey,
no,
is it?
It's detritus. It's the detritus of running a business. It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
But so sometimes purpose is, I'm going to change the world and make these incredible campaigns and make films that really matter. And I will come back to that, and campaigns that really matter. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that you're going to change the world. It can just be, I'm going to make sure that the experience for the lives that I touch is as good as it can possibly be. That for me can be profound. So, and in times of economic difficulty, the role of the entrepreneur in society is really important. And we have a duty of care, I think, to help as many people as we can. And so, that for me, my father ran a fashion business, and, it was always very big and important for him that he helped people get mortgages, that he helped them with those milestones, and that he was part of their lives. And that's what gave him meaning and purpose. And he really made sure that was, deeply sort of in my psyche, I think is probably the way to describe it.
And it is so important, isn't it? Because I think, that, again, I think you've sort of touched around some subjects there. I think that role of the entrepreneur in society is really misunderstood, isn't it? The world would say it's all, the entrepreneur just sees it about money. And you talk to 95% of people that run their own business, from small to large, and they have this sense of responsibility and purpose and care for their teams. And there is financial rewards that come with it if you get it right and you do the right thing and you serve your clients well and you deliver client delight and you look after your team. But that's a consequence of having a great idea and doing the right things, isn't it? Doing what's hard, not necessarily what's easy.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I'm a huge and passionate advocate of the role of and the promotion of female entrepreneurship. And there's lots of reasons for that, and you'll have probably seen some of the things that I've said about that. So the work that Alison Rose has done with the Rose Review, digging into the entrepreneurial gender gap in this country. And just to be clear, the Rose Review believes that if we close, in the next decade, if we close the entrepreneurial gender gap in the UK, it's worth £250 billion to the UK economy. And being really sort of basic about it, pretty much there is 2 male business owners for every female business owner. So the ratio is 2 to 1. And then in addition to that, only 1 penny in every pound of investment capital from private equity goes to female-led businesses, despite the fact that the returns seen from female founders when they do get investment are actually 30% higher than a typical sort of investment. So the world does need more female entrepreneurs, and it needs more female entrepreneurs because women run different kinds of businesses, and we need great male-led businesses and we need great female-led businesses because that is diversity. And we have a more diverse and fair society when the wealth of everybody is shared around better and equally. So I'm incredibly passionate about it, and we did I'm a huge advocate of the work that Alison is doing. I think she is, making a huge difference. And we did a big campaign for NatWest called Dream Bigger. And the idea was to inspire young girls to believe that they could be entrepreneurs. And so the research that we did showed us that at the age of 14, young girls lose their ambition. And we don't actually yet know, and I want to commission a study on exactly why this happens, but it's the kind of death by a thousand cuts. So peer pressure, throwaway comments by teachers where they just push them towards different subjects or say, no, that's not a safe idea. Parents assuming that that it's more like, that there's a safer option in accountancy or graphic design or something.
Take a job as a nurse or a professional service or, serve people, that kind of thing, rather than have, take that spirit that a lot of teenage girls have got and harness it and embrace it. And yes. So basically, boys and girls are equal to 14, and then boys become more ambitious and girls become less ambitious. And so we created a campaign to try and address that. So it went out to 55,000 young girls in schools, a series of films, workshops, interactions, all sorts of things to help them really think about their ambition. And an awful lot of the kind of work I do, or the interviews I will do, I will always try and talk about, if you can see her, you can be her. The power of role modeling. So some of the other thing that the other research that came out of the Rose Review was that one of the single most important things that can happen is if you can see a female leader who you can identify with, you're more likely to believe it's possible. So just like Eliud Kipchoge, running a sub 2 hour marathon. Once it's happened, other people can do it. Once you see a woman in a position of power and authority that you can identify with, you can kind of believe it. So it's not people like, awesome though she is, Rihanna, who actually has a $1 billion valuation business. None of us can identify with that. She's a gorgeous megastar. It's kind of kitchen table businesses. It's, women who may employ 5 people. It's all women at all levels talking about their experience. And it's got to be, surely that means it's got to be role models in the community. And but that's got to start again at school, isn't it? How do the schools connect with the businesses that are female run and female owned, and how do they make those connections, and how do they get that self-belief in the girls at that age of 14? If that's the critical age, that's a good starting point, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And if you ask the general population to name 4 female entrepreneurs, most of them can't name one. And if they do, it will be a celebrity entrepreneur. So it won't be somebody like Whitney Wolfe Herd, who founded Bumble and IPO'd it at $13 billion. She is an incredible, and she stood there on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with her 18-month-old baby as she launched her IPO. I mean, just incredible entrepreneur. Most people have not heard of her. We've got women like Sarah Murray, who founded a unicorn business, who has her headquarters in Scotland. She's an incredible entrepreneur. I hadn't heard of her until a year ago when I met her, and she started a unicorn. She's potentially the next Elon Musk.
But do you think, partly does your industry have something to play in this, in the media generally, and I suppose more, the media, the publications, the actual TV channels? Do you think they don't fairly represent, the female entrepreneur, on telly? Do you think there's something that's holding it back kind of nearly institutionally within that kind of media sector.
So I think there is huge progress happening all the time, and I don't think that the blame lies in any one place. It isn't like that. The biggest initial challenge is that culturally, women don't like, and I'm using inverted commas, but you can't see them, boasting about their achievements. So women are culturally, typically taught to be humble. And the problem is in order to inspire the next generation of female entrepreneurs, you kind of have to shout about your achievements a little bit. And that's something that, we struggle with. So I know an incredible woman, I don't want to embarrass her, but she in 20 years, I'm not going to say her name because I'm going to say a number and she wouldn't like it. But in 20 years, she grew her business from nothing to a valuation of over 2.5 billion, almost single-handedly. And no one's ever heard of her. and so if we don't know those characters and we don't know those stories, and it isn't all on the media and the PR industry, it is also about the women choosing to come forward and deciding that actually it's not your duty, it's still a choice, but there is a huge benefit. So when I met her, she changed my life because I thought, oh my God, she could do it. That's possible. That is possible. It's not a wildly dissimilar business to this one. So it's, again, you kind of let it makes you think bigger. So going back to that kind of the Dream Bigger campaign that we did for NatWest, it makes you think bigger. What is possible? Actually, if I raise this much investment, I can get here. But why not raise this much and go there?
And do you think that must be another part of it, isn't it? Is that kind of, like you say, that brought up to be humble, that kind of imposter syndrome, which I think all in business can suffer from, but maybe female entrepreneurs suffer from it more. But it is also that piece around, I get it now, it's that role model piece. And if we don't hear the role models, they don't get the stories. So therefore, people don't think bigger. Do you think there's a generational change, though, that for the better, that, if you go back 10, 15 years, even male entrepreneurs were it's alpha male world, survival of the fittest. And even the female entrepreneurs that would succeed were very alpha female like character. And we have had this generational shift, and we that, hopefully will now continue, which is actually, you don't need to be that ego. You don't have to bring your ego into business. And in fact, better success is created without ego. That will help equate the balance, that more women will become more prominent?
I think it's a really important question. And I think, I typically, it helps me to look at it from a sort of Jungian perspective. That's sort of how I see the world. So that's kind of masculine and feminine aren't man and woman. So, when we think of it like that, the masculine from a Jungian perspective is kind of arrow-like. So this is a problem, I will solve it. And feminine, and obviously we're all men and women, a combination of the two is circular, and let's think around the problem and let's work out a solution. So you've got capitalism or circular economy, that kind of really sort of in a really basic way. And actually, I would be the first to say, and I think, again, it's important that people are honest about it. In order to be successful at the beginning of my journey, and for a long part of it, I did business like a man, for sure. Okay. So you look at someone like Whitney Wolfe Herd, and she has always run her business in a feminine way. Incredible maternity policies, incredible, 80% women in the company. Her product is obviously a dating app focused, directed towards women, etc., etc. So she's really in that space. For me, I remember, just before I had my first child, I was on a shoot and I was 8.5 months pregnant, and I did a 16-hour day. And that was what was expected of women in the industry then. If you wanted to work in production, and obviously it's kind of, I've got a broad spectrum of things that I work across, but if you wanted to work in production, it's long days. And there was no way of being a pregnant woman and not doing, you can't leave halfway through the shoot. You can either do the shoot or not do it, really. And so I definitely was like that. And it's been one of the kind of greatest joys of my life to start sort of taking off the armor and thawing and just becoming myself and saying, because I'm going to put my kids to bed, I won't take calls at that time, or whatever. And then you kind of, and I don't expect it of the women that work for me. I don't expect someone who's coming back from maternity leave or breastfeeding or, or is a single mum to go on a shoot for 16 hours.
And it must feel great, because I think it's a journey I've been on, 17, 18 years into kind of having left corporate life and formed a number of businesses. It took me a long time to do exactly what you said, which is be me.
Yeah.
I always thought I had to be somebody else. And therefore, actually when you learn and you get that confidence, and I suppose confidence comes with a bit of success, doesn't it? And then you kind of go, right, this is me. So I'm going to be me. And that's when I think true happiness, success, and you can feel satisfied in what you're doing. But I think that is a challenge even for any entrepreneur, anybody starting a business, is that, how can they be true to themselves? Because it can be difficult, can't it?
I think it's really difficult, and I think you're not true to yourself every day. I think you cross your own moral compass. I think and what good looks like is when you've done it, knowing it, and going back and unpicking what you've done. I mean, we're not perfect. We're human.
No.
And I think you have to always wake up and go, if I did my best, it's not always going to be, And I do, like you, I think that journey to true authenticity in the workplace and being yourself is tough. It doesn't. I definitely wasn't myself fully formed the day I started Media Zoo. I was I had a persona, and the persona was, I'm going to be as good as a man, and not just whoever I am, just different.
So what would you do differently if you go back 19 years to 2003 and you're, founding the company again? What would you do differently in hindsight? Is there anything you'd do differently?
Well, there's loads of things, but I think weirdly, I really regret not doing an MBA. So I think, and I think it's different for different people, but I think the connections that you make, I think, what happened for me, and this does all tie into answering your question, was that when I had my first child, I took some time off and I went to this little club called Cupcake, and it had a mumpreneur class, and it had a creche, and you put your baby in the creche and you went and studied. The lady who founded it was called Karen, and she became the chief of staff in the end of Amazon in Seattle. But before she did that, she was the marketing director at American Express, and then she left that and set up her own business, which was Cupcake. And I just randomly happened in, and she had been to the London Business School and done an MBA, and she ran these classes and she would print off her notes and hand them out. And that was the first time I ever learned, this is how you market your business, this is how you raise capital, this is how you think about a business plan, this is where you're going. Without her, I was totally clueless. And so it was just organic growing as it grew, and putting one foot in front of the other, and it just sort of went wherever it went. Because of her and her generosity, I learned how to plan it and think about where I wanted it to go. And I mean, it's completely down to her. And, the women that have helped me along the way have been phenomenal. I'm incredibly lucky. But that was utterly game changing, having a little bit of time and doing that. And I think looking back, business is a skill, isn't it? It's a skill that you can learn. Now, some people are really naturally entrepreneurial. Like, I like selling stuff, and I'll put stuff on the pavement and sell it. And I used to sell secondhand cars, and I was always setting up little businesses. That's in me. But the skill bit of it, that wasn't in me.
Yeah. It's interesting though, but skill, in my personal opinion, maybe it'd be interesting to see what you think. I think the more skill you gain, and actually I think we all start our businesses perhaps not thinking we need some of those skills, and we do then go on courses, or we find mentors. For me, I think it was finding mentors that would just keep me in check and just point me in the right direction, or saying, well, go and read about this or go and do that. I think skills is something, and I think you will have greater chance of success with skills, but you still need that intuition, don't you? You still need that ability to assess risk and take the calculated risks. And I think that's this kind of nature-nurture thing, isn't it? Is, are business owners, entrepreneurs born or bred? I suppose you're saying you can learn to become an entrepreneur, a business owner?
So I think there's a huge. I suspect there's some people that should never do it. I mean, interestingly, Karen, who I adore, her business failed, and the consequences of that for her, it's her personal story, I won't go into it, but they were catastrophic. So she really did, lose everything. And then bounced back and became a phenomenally successful, phenomenal leader at Amazon. So I think not everybody is destined to be an entrepreneur. And she always said to me afterwards, that wasn't my journey. And learning everything at London Business School doesn't give you that nous, No. But I do think there is a whole swathe of people who don't even consider entrepreneurship, who would be amazing. And I think, so that starts with the role modeling and putting the idea in people's heads. And that's, that's a kind of, right now in your career conversations at school, no one's ever going to say to you, ever thought about being an entrepreneur? And that's something that has to happen. Entrepreneurs are incredibly important to the economy. We provide jobs and solve society's problems. And I think the other thing, and actually I wanted to pick up on this because I think it was such a good question you asked me earlier about the role we have to play as an industry. And I think that entrepreneurship needs a rebrand. I really, really think that. So we still think Ferraris, fast cars, pin substitutes, the 80s, and Alan Sugar.
Social media. Well, it's the social media thing as well, isn't it? It's that perception that,
greed.
That's what it's all about. It's get rich quick. Yeah.
All that. And actually, like you said earlier, that isn't why most entrepreneurs do it. It's problem solving. It's big challenges in society. And it's such a noble, it can be such a noble pursuit. For so few people, it's about greed and money. It's not. It's about making things, solving things, helping people. That's what it's about. And we don't think of entrepreneurship like that. And therefore, most people are repelled by it as a thought. And it only attracts a sort of niche audience, as it were. And so, again, when we hear from more diverse business owners about more interesting and diverse businesses, then I think we begin to understand the potential, and I think hopefully inspire the next generation. And I think, now we can see, post-COVID with the hustle kind of culture, more and more people are starting their own businesses, and more people are seeing the potential and the benefits, and that's brilliant. That can only be a brilliant thing for all of us.
Absolutely, definitely. And I suppose, we touched on that pause you had and that kind of self kind of education piece that you had when you had your first child. I suppose running your own business, how's that affected your personal life? Being entrepreneurial as a character, how's that impacted on you and your family?
So I think it has had an impact. I was by myself when I had my daughter. So I had this amazing girl who lived with me. So I was very free because I didn't have to get home for the childcare or anything like that, because she took care of my daughter. But I think the impact that it's had on my family is that I now see, we can all work from home and we can get home early and make up the work in the evening. I never gave myself permission to do that. So my daughter's 14 and my son's 11. And I think the benefits for them have been that my son assumes that all women run businesses. And,
brilliant.
He totally doesn't, he's always being asked, like someone said, I think the other day, your dad drives a nice car. What does he do for a living? And he was like, oh, no, it's my mum. He's at home with us. And, my mum bought the car. But it's that sort of just not assuming that men are going to be the kind of the breadwinner winners. So that's important. So he's seen that, and but there was a price to pay. I missed stuff. I wasn't there, and now I don't think I'd have to miss anything because the world has changed. I think that has all been for the good for all entrepreneurs, that you don't feel like you have to be in the office and be seen. Yeah,
I mean, that is something in the last 2 years that has changed, isn't it? And absolutely will fuel a different generation, a new generation, and like you say, maybe a generation with more diversity in its business ownership and leaders and entrepreneurs, which would be great. I would like to come back because I loved this Zoonies concept. So I'm going to have to come back to that as part of the conversation. Is the principle behind that you think that the educational sector isn't giving you the individuals that you would need for your business? Or is it something else that has driven you to create the Zooinversity?
I think there are huge challenges with the education sector in this country, but that isn't the reason. They still wouldn't be probably leaving with the skills that we need. So I think, the business answer is simply we are expanding at an incredibly rapid rate and we cannot find the talent that we need for the roles that we have. So that's a simple answer. There is also the fact that if we can give young people digital skills that make them immediately employable, pretty much, or after a 12-week course, employable, that is hugely valuable, and that matters. And so if we come back to what fills you with joy, what gives you purpose, grads often, and they don't have to be grads to go on to become a Zoonie, but at all. And I would hate to think anyone to think that, but ultimately, they often come into the workplace not really ready to work. I think this has changed hugely in that you think. I don't know if I can articulate this well. Some young people now start at a level that it would have taken you 10 years to get to. So that's the truth, yeah? So especially in filmmaking, yeah. So you wouldn't have been allowed to edit stuff, film stuff, do all that. And yet people come into the workplace sometimes now fully baked, okay? So they can do everything. Yeah. And you can see that as long as you've taught them your processes, they're actually, almost ready to go. It's incredible. And I mean, that would have been unheard of 10 years ago. It was, you had to do 2 years in sound, and then everybody
was held back that little bit. There was ladders. There was a ladder to climb. Yeah.
And people turn up now, and they're like, 21, and they can do everything, and they're incredible with the clients, and they can film everything and edit everything. They're just amazing. You're like, oh my god, you're incredible. But there is also a huge kind of a huge amount of young people that come to us looking for employment. That don't have despite spending years in the education system, often getting a degree, that don't have a single real skill that we can use on day one. And there is a skills crisis in this country. So, I mean, there is a severe skills crisis, and especially in the digital sector. And so if we want bright and brilliant young people to have the skills that we need for the jobs that we have to give them. It's as simple as that.
And good for you, and just investing in that and creating that. And obviously there's a business case for doing it, but the fact that you're prepared to invest and grow your own and really put, the business behind doing that is incredible. And very, very inspirational to hear. So as we sort of start to sort of wrap up our conversation, I wouldn't mind just touching on the sort of PR, creative comms kind of world. And there's obviously been a huge shift, not alone in the 19 years, but in the last 5 years in terms of comms and creative comms and PR in the UK and in the world. Where do you see that world in 5 years' time? If you had your crystal ball, where do you think we're going in terms of the creative sector and comms, and what we're going to start to see, do you think?
Well, I do think if we're talking about 5 years, I think it's going to take 5 years for the metaverse to really become what I think we all thought it was going to be in 12 months, if that makes sense. So I think that the possibility that the metaverse allows us and allows brands and us as either filmmakers, content creators, PRs, consumers is phenomenal. And I think if you just sort of look at, I don't know, your kids playing Roblox or something, and you think about the brand experiences that they could have within a game like that. So I think in gaming, it's almost ready to go. But we create quite a lot of 360 content, and we experiment an awful lot in that space. And people still don't really like wearing the headsets. I mean, I've got some big things, they're all embargoed, but you know, when you get to that point where you're like, just like, we're going to put the headset on and that kind of thing, and those kind of experiences, we're not there yet. We're just not there in the user experience. So, but we will get there. And I think that will be game changing. I think the authentic piece as well. I think this is, you know, because of fake news, because of COVID, because of so many things, this kind of yearning for a human experience, an authentic experience, and I think probably, and this is bigger than PR, but it affects everything, is that businesses have to stand for something. Consumers will not tolerate businesses that don't have an authentic story, that stand for something that matter. And, you know, whether it's, you know, companies like Novo Nordisk and the triple bottom line, where they're not just measuring, you know, profit, they're measuring their impact on people and on the planet. And I think this is so important. And I think the stories that we tell around that, whether we do it in the metaverse or we do it in the Financial Times, or going, that piece is just going to accelerate. But it changes everything, doesn't it? You know, our purpose as a business is to use our creativity as a force for good. And so, you know, we will, and it's complex and it's nuanced. You know, we've, one of the campaigns that we have done in the last 12 months was we launched an over-the-counter contraceptive pill aimed at young girls. And it's the first one, well, we did the PR around it. We didn't create the pill and do that, you know, but something like that, you know, use your creativity as a force for good. That isn't always going to be seen as a force for good for everybody, but we believe in that. We think it is using our creativity as a force for good, and it's very complicated. Sometimes it's nuanced. There's a fine line, and for me, ensuring that young girls have access to emergency contraception is you know, the kind of, it matters, and I care about it. And the Dream Bigger campaign, using our creativity as a force for good. And we do a lot of things that are kind of inside and outside businesses.
That's really interesting, because I can see, and the listeners will hear the passion that you have for some of these subjects that we've talked about. But you're still owner managed, you know, you're co-founded, still driving it. So your purpose can cascade through. But does there get to a point where the organisation becomes so big that, you know, your sense of values doesn't cascade through the organisation? Do you think that's a risk for Media Zoo?
Oh, there's definitely a risk. Well, I mean, there's the values piece and there's the entrepreneurial spirit of an organisation, and definitely the entrepreneurial spirit of this organisation and many businesses as they scale is one of the things that gets under greatest attack. You need the level of kind of process and management to come into the business, and that also stifles creativity, crushes responsibility, and all that stuff. So that
doesn't allow filming in the corridors, doesn't allow a hotel bill to be
you
paid.
Could make up, you know, you could. I mean, I'm like, I can't. I really, yes, exactly that. We do allow people to film everywhere, but it becomes, there's red tape, etc., etc. The values piece, I think, is, I don't want my values, my personal values, to be imposed on any other human. I want to create a business where their values can fit. So we can have companies.
But surely there has, and very much in the early days, but even 19 years in, surely there's got to be alignment for you to want to lead a business that does resonate with your personal values. You know, I get your personal values can't 100% be kind of cascaded in, force-fed into the business, but there has to be alignment, Rachel, surely. Otherwise, you'll end up leading a business that you don't feel like you belong in.
Well, but it's called the zoo, and diversity is the secret of its success. I want people here that don't agree with me. I want people who have radically different values to me. But obviously, in terms of the way we answer the call of our clients and the projects and the quality of the work that we do and why we do it, there has to be common ground where we all come together, of course. But yeah, I don't need everybody to share my values, and they won't. And I like that diversity of thought is incredibly important. And, I think, it's one of the things that we've kind of risked in cancel culture. I want, people to be brave. I want them to be outspoken. I want them to be pioneers. I want them to feel that, that they can have challenging and difficult conversations. And I think that's absolutely critical. And I don't share the religious beliefs of lots of the people I work with. I don't share the spiritual beliefs. I don't share the political beliefs, all these things. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, diversity is great, isn't it? And that is such a fantastic response. And I get the whole zoo piece and all of those things. But I think you're giving yourself discredit, because I think one of your, even in the short conversations, first conversation we ever had, Rachel, I think your openness to new ideas, your openness to accepting others and listening to others is probably one of your core values. So I think it does, I would say it does resonate through your organisation. So we've got so much more I could talk to you about, but we need to wrap up our conversation. So as we sort of come to the end of the discussion, I always ask this sort of same question, and I think our listeners will get a feel for this throughout the conversation we've had, Rachel, is what is your own personal definition of success?
Well, first of all, you have to have enough money to fulfill your imagination. So it does matter, and I would never say it doesn't matter. It just doesn't, it ceases to matter very quickly. So that absolutely has to happen. So it's all about, your imagination. And for me, on a personal level, this isn't the pithy short answer that I should have given you, but I have 3-year, 5-year, I have goals, and I see exactly where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. And so I imagine it, and then I make it come true. And it just has to be fun.
And they're personal goals that you have. You set yourself those 12, 3-year, 5-year goals, and you obviously believe in and really believe in them as a vision and creating the image of them and then fulfilling them.
I think it's about it feels like painting with your life. So the definition, if I tried to give it a sentence, the definition is leading an intentional life where you imagine what you want to do and make it come true.
Fantastic. That's an amazing sentiment to end this conversation, Rachel. If people want to learn more about you, more about Media Zoo, where can they go? For social media, I'm most active on LinkedIn, but also I'm happy to be contacted at rachel@mediazoo.tv. I pretty much get back to people within a sensible time frame. LinkedIn is definitely the best place. I'm pretty active on that. So, and obviously there's the Media Zoo website if you want to come and have a look at what we do. Brilliant. Rachel, thank you for being such a passionate guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast. It's been great to have this conversation with you and learn about some of those passions and those beliefs you've had. And just thank you for so honestly sharing it with our listeners.
Thank you so much. I've had such fun.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.